We must pay attention to the ongoing civilizational erasure, whereby our traditional spaces are taken over and we are fooled by universalism, whereas these civilizations are active and they are not only attacking physical spaces but the spiritual essence. As I've always said, there are four civilizations. You have the Western civilization, you have the Afro-Asiatic civilization, and you have the Asiatic civilization. And then you have ours, the indigenous African civilization. But the Afro-Asiatic Islamic civilization and the Western Christian civilizations try to say that we do not exist, that we don't have a civilization, that we were not civilized. But this is false. And unfortunately, our elites are fooled by universalism. And the most important part of this right now is that if you look at every civilization, major civilizations, at the center, they combine energies. Like in America, you have the White House, you have the National Mall, you have the Lincoln Memorial, which ties the Congress, which ties the executive, the legislative powers, and everything to the civilization. If you, in England, too, you have the palace to its right. You have a white, whereas to its west, you get to Oxford Street through Marble Arch. Now, the same thing is what we have in the indigenous African civilization, especially Ife, which is the acclaimed source of it. You have the palace. In the palace, then you have a long lawn, just like the Americans. Then you have Okitase, which is the origin of Ifa, the philosophical and spiritual that underpins the civilization. Then you have Aje and Ogun. They all form a T, and that's what you call the spiritual geometry. Now, what they have done is that spiritual line between the palace and Okitase, the Afro-Asiatic civilization intentionally built a mosque whose dome blocks the direct relationship. And this is not only in Ife. If you look around Yoruba land, like in Akure or in most other towns, you realize they built a mosque around the palace. And this all goes to that misconception that we do not have a philosophy of our own, we do not have a civilization of our own, so they can infiltrate and derail the identity, our cultural identity. And it's a problem. We've seen that that space, especially in Enua Palace, is a spiritual space that ties the whole civilization. It should not have anybody, it should not have any other civilization within that triangle. That's an intrusion, that's a spiritual intrusion from another civilization. Yes, the whole society, and especially the African indigenous civilization, is receptive and there's a freedom of religious beliefs. But there should be respect, there should be civilizational courtesies that at this center, at this core, no other civilizational should infiltrate that core. But what the Afro-Asiatic civilization has done ever since defeating Oyole and setting up a new Oyo Atiba, whose Alaafin was crowned by the Afro-Asiatic civilization, is that there's been a continuous erasure of the indigenous African civilization. To make it worse, well, the British, when they came, they wrote the Bible in Yoruba, which was a dialect of Oyo, and used that dialect as a common language for all of us. But most important, they gave issue and other things. They misconceptualized a lot of things in Yoruba land just to wipe off that history. They also made sure that they widened what was a continuum of dialect from Ife into Edo, into Yoruba, into Igbo land. It was a continuum of dialect. But when the European came, he now wrote those languages with different linguistic techniques to make them look very distant. And that's why we have some people saying, oh, why is Ooni of Ife the permanent head of the indigenous African civilization? There was an Enugu monarch who came up with that. But from that same Enugu state, there were, I think it was in 2019, in June, well, some monarchs from that area said that if all black people were Catholics, Ooni of Ife is the Pope. So just as you find that the Sultan is the permanent representative of the Afro-Asiatic Islamic body, so is Ooni of Ife the oldest and most complete on a civilization based on Ifa, Afa, which all indigenous Africans used to build their advanced social organization. So we must wake up to that fact that we are a civilization, that apart from these tribes, and while the whole world is solidified in their civilizations, as we hear the Americans reach out to the Europeans, and we see the Muslims, the Africans read up, we indigenous African civilization must understand who and where we are, and to stop this erasure, this contamination, this hybrid in the name of universalism. No, you could build your mosque anywhere. Currently now we have problems in Otoye, where the Muslims who are given land now claim that they cannot have a market. But you cannot have a palace without the economics beside it. So once you have a palace, you have the economics, and you have the shrine. That is what that civilization sits on. But when you now have a mosque or a Christian, they will say, no, you can't do that. Or when you're having your festivals, then the Muslim will say no. And this has to stop. Go and build your mosque anywhere you want, but leave that sacred geometry in our cities.